Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, on this very warm welcome that we're giving you tonight. It's warm, right? But not here. The 19th season of the Riverside Township Radio Players. Did 19 years go by quickly or what? I can barely believe it. We're very happy to be here and glad to see so many familiar faces in our audience. How many of you have never been here before? Ah, very good. I hope you come again. We'll look forward to you. And bring some more neighbors with you. What we long-timers are particularly pleased about is that a few younger voices have joined us, as you've noticed, and it always surprises me that the radio shows from that golden age of radio interest them and are brand new to them, as opposed to those of us who have heard the originals 60, 70, and 80 years ago. I don't know who that would be. Our first recreation tonight is one that we've never presented before. It's a series heard on radio for only 1 year, early in the 50s. The story of Dr. Kildare, a young idealistic physician, and his crusty old partner, Dr. Gillespie. It started out as a popular MGM film series before being brought to radio. Now, the medical world has changed just a bit since those days, but tonight's show dwells more on the personal care available to some patients then, with some social issues as a sideline. So please sit back, tune up the dial, and listen to a radio show from Wednesday, July 19, 1950.
The story of Dr. Kildare.
No filter, huh? Whatsoever house I enter, there will I go for the benefit of the sick. Whatsoever things I see or hear concerning the life of men, I will keep silence thereon, counting such things to be held as sacred trust. I will exercise my art.
The story of Dr. Kildare, starring Lou Ayres and Lionel Barrymore. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer brought you those famous motion pictures. Now, this exciting, heartwarming series is heard on radio. The story of Dr. Kildare, starring Lou Ayres as Dr. Kildare and Lionel Barrymore as Dr. Gillespie.
Blair General Hospital, one of the great citadels of American medicine, a clump of gray-white buildings planted deep in the heart of New York, the nerve center of medical progress, where great minds and skilled hands wage man's everlasting battle against death and disease. Blair General Hospital, where life begins, where life ends, where life goes on. Well, I guess that's about all we can do for her until morning, Dr. Gillespie.
She'll be all right, Jimmy. She showed her good response to the stimulus. Parker?
Yes, Dr. Gillespie.
Parker, you'd better stay here with Miss Sanford for an hour or so, till we have another nurse assigned.
All right, Doctor.
Well, it's a good thing she had medical attention in a hurry. At her age, with a case of angina pectoris as bad as this...
Apparently, she didn't even know she had a heart condition.
No? Well, the intern who went out with the ambulance said no one in her family had given her any kind of a stimulant. Didn't have any in the house, in fact.
Well, they'd better have some now, from now on.
Yes. Anybody who can make her frightened enough or mad enough actually holds her life right in his hands.
I'm Mrs. Sanford's nephew, gentlemen, Everett Ward.
How do you do?
And this is Miss Lane, Deborah Lane, my aunt's companion and secretary.
How do you do?
How do you do?
How is my aunt?
Well, she's asleep now, Mr. Ward. Out of danger as far as this particular attack is concerned.
Oh, I'm so glad. We were terribly worried.
Good reason to be, young lady. That woman's heart is in pretty bad shape.
None of us even suspected it.
And her condition is really serious? I mean, in danger from now on?
Oh, considerable, Miss Lane. She'll have to be carefully protected from any kind of emotional excitement. That is, anger, fear, that sort of thing.
Well, fortunately for her, my aunt is a very even-tempered person and seldom gets upset.
Yet, I think tonight is the only time in 2 years that I've seen her actually angry. Of course, Miss Amy feels responsible
Deborah, I don't think it's necessary to discuss the personal affairs of our household publicly.
I see nothing so very personal about it, Everett.
I insist that you drop the subject.
Insist? You know I'm not employed by you.
While my aunt is incapacitated, you may assume that I am in charge of her affairs.
I see.
Gentlemen, I apologize for this confrontation.
Well, I don't see any point in my staying here since Mrs. Sanford seems to be out of danger. Is there any place I can get a cup of coffee?
Why, yes, Miss Lane. Sullivan's right across the street. Open all night. I was just going over there if you'd care to join me.
Why, thank you, Dr. Kildare. I'd love to.
Good. Let's go. See you later, Dr. Gillespie. Good night, Mr. Ward.
Good night, Dr. Kildare.
She's quite a lovely girl.
Yes, she's lovely enough. Apparently, she's made another conquest.
Kildare, you mean? Well, I guess he did have a kind of glint in his eye at that.
Dr. Gillespie, that girl is a devil.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Kildare.
Good morning, Parker. Dr. Gillespie?
You're late, coffee lover.
Coffee lover?
My Secret Service advises me that you came back into the hospital at 1:45 a.m.
Oh, I see. Parker?
Oh, good heavens, not me, Dr. Kildare. It was long past my bedtime when you came back from, that is, when you must have come back.
Parker, you just hanged yourself.
Dr. Gillespie, I will never tell you another thing as long as I live.
Sure you will, Parker. You just can't help yourself. Your brain consists entirely of tattletale gray matter. Furthermore, you're a congenital snoop.
Why,
You know, Jimmy, I don't blame you.
Blame me?
Miss Lane is a very pretty girl.
Oh, well, she's certainly a very interesting girl.
It's merely another way of saying the same thing.
All right, but she happens to be both.
Her employer's nephew doesn't seem to have quite the same opinion.
Ward? Well, I guess he's been sitting around for years waiting for Mrs. Sanford to die so he can take over her fortune. Deborah can't stand him.
Deborah, huh? Apparently you've been making progress, Jimmy.
Well, maybe we better go have a look at Mrs. Sanford.
Yes, that's right. I'd almost forgotten about her heart condition.
What are you talking about?
Merely thinking about one of the more basic acts of medicine, Jimmy. Whenever the human heart begins to act up, it always means trouble.
Gentlemen, I hardly know what to say. Of course, I've noticed pain once in a while, but a woman my age expects to have an occasional pain.
Well, an occasional pain is all you'll need to worry about if you'll just take care of yourself. No more arguments like the one last night, for instance.
Oh, I shouldn't have let myself become so angry. But Amy, Amy knows better. She knows how those things frighten me.
Those things?
Oh, didn't Deborah tell you?
No.
Well, you see, my sister Amy lives with me, and last night I found it was something I had expressly forbidden her ever to bring into the house again. A Ouija board.
A Ouija board? Well, now that seems like a harmless pastime.
Possibly for some people, but Amy has an obsession along those lines. She spends most of her time trying to communicate with the dead.
Well, and as you say, this sort of thing frightens you, Mrs. Sanford?
Oh, it terrifies me. Apparitions, ghostly voices. I don't even like to think about them.
Well, maybe I better speak to Amy when I stop by to see you tonight.
Stop by to see me?
Why, yes, in case of angina, there's no reason to keep the patient in the hospital after the attack is over.
Oh.
But I thought I would call at your home after dinner and see how you're feeling.
But, Kildare, you're not on duty tonight.
Oh, that's all right. I don't mind. It's no trouble at all.
I see.
You would.
Miss Sanford, I think you can count on some very devoted medical attention from Dr. Kildare.
That's awfully nice of you, Doctor. But I hope you won't scold Amy. She'd probably feel guilty enough already.
No, but I do want to impress her with the importance of not upsetting you under any circumstances.
Yes, that is something to think about. My life is in the hands of anybody who can make me frightened or angry. It makes you wonder.
Oh, good evening, Dr. Kildare. Come in, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. How's Mrs. Sanford feeling this evening?
Much better, Doctor. Her sitting room is on the second floor. I'll take you up.
Thank you, but I'd like to see Miss Lane first, if I may.
I see. You're wasting your time, you know.
Uh-huh. Well, it's my time, Mr. Ward.
She's a heartless, selfish little devil, Dr. Kildare. Nothing means anything to her except money. I'm warning you.
But there's a question whether you're warning me for my sake or for yours.
Very well. I'll tell her you're here. Please sit down.
Quite a place. Mrs. Sanford must be worth a fortune.
Hello?
Huh? Oh, how do you do? I'm Dr. Kildare. I assume you're Miss Amy.
Why, yes, I am. How could you possibly know that?
Oh, just a guess.
They told you.
They?
Spirits. We have to be very careful. Nobody here lets me talk about things like that.
I see.
Tell me, are you a believer too?
Well,
My sister's not a believer. Are you a doctor?
Yes.
It's my fault, you know.
No, it wasn't your fault at all. You didn't know about the heart condition.
Oh, no.
Now that you found out how serious it is, you understand the importance of not getting her upset again.
I wouldn't upset her for the world. Of course, I hope they won't be angry about it.
They?
The spirits.
Oh, yes.
They could cause a lot of trouble if they became angry, you know.
Uh-huh.
Noises at night and all that sort of thing.
Yes, well, let's hope they don't become angry then.
Hi, Jimmy.
Deborah.
Ward said you were here. Oh, I see you've met Miss Amy.
Yes. We had a very pleasant conversation.
Well, I have to go now. I hope you will excuse me.
You remember what we talked about, Amy?
Oh, yes, Doctor. I'll remember. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
She's really awfully sweet.
Yes.
Jimmy, I had a wonderful time last night. I'm so glad you came this evening.
Oh, good. Technically, I'm making a professional call on Mrs. Sanford, of course. Apparently, Mr. Ward prefers that I limit it to that.
Does his preference really mean very much?
Not to me. What do you prefer, Deborah?
That you don't limit it to that.
Well, I'd better run up and take a look at my patient.
All right, Jimmy. Come down to the study when you're through. I'll be waiting.
Right.
And that's another thing, Dr. Gillespie.
Doesn't mean anything. I suppose he's made a call at that house every evening this week because of his professional concern with Mrs. Sanford's heart.
Maybe.
Kildare has always been putty in the hands of a scheming and designing female. Putty.
Well, I haven't noticed him crying for help.
Of course not. She's got him hypnotized. He doesn't even know he's drowning.
Well, personally, I don't think he is.
You don't think who's doing what, Parker?
I don't think you're drowning, Dr. Gillespie.
Parker!
That is, of course, what I mean is...
Pay no attention to her, Jimmy. You know how Parker is. Out of her mind half the time.
Well...
Jimmy, I was wondering if we could spend this evening going over the monthly progress reports together.
Well, couldn't we sort of take care of that in the morning?
No, I'm all tied up tomorrow.
Well, I had a tentative engagement this evening.
Oh, social engagement.
No, not exactly. No, I thought I'd drop by and see how Mrs. Sanford's getting along.
Oh, well now, if that's what it is, let's just forget it. All she needs is rest and quiet.
Yeah, but you see, if,
Oh, confound that phone. Gillespie speaking. Eh? How long ago? Yes, right away. Goodbye. Come on, Jimmy. We're both going over to Mrs. Sanford's.
Mrs. Sanford's?
Never
You said...
mind. Never mind that now. She just had another heart attack. A bad one.
Oh, she's beginning to come out of it.
Yeah. Her pulse is steady. It's stronger now.
Oh, that was a close shave. Wonder what brought it on.
None of them seems to know. She was apparently alone at the time.
No, go away.
Easy now. It's all right, Mrs. Sanford. Everything is all right.
Oh, Dr. Kildare, Dr. Gillespie, are they here?
Yes, that's right, Mrs. Sanford. You just relax now. Nothing to worry about.
Oh, I'm so frightened. I tried to scream. I was terrified.
Terrified? Of what?
Something. I don't know what.
What do you mean by something, Miss Sanford?
Oh, it was like a ghost. It was carrying a long knife. I could see it in the moonlight. And then, that's all I remember.
Well, anyway, it's all over now. We're here and your family's outside. They're in your sitting room. So you just lie back and go to sleep.
Oh, yes. I'm so tired. But I'm so glad that both of you are here. It's all right now.
Come on, Jimmy.
Well, what do you think?
About the ghost?
Well, I don't know, Dr. Gillespie, but I think we'd better find out. No, I think it's best that you don't go in to see her tonight, Mr. Ward. None of you, in fact. She's asleep now and shouldn't be disturbed.
Yes, I suppose you're right.
And in view of what happened tonight, it's Dr. Kildare's and my opinion that she should have a permanent nurse with her starting in the morning.
Just what did happen exactly? Everett sent me to the drugstore for some cigarettes, and when I came back, Mrs. Sanford had had an attack. What caused it?
Well, we didn't want to get her upset by questioning her. We were hoping one of you might know something about it.
As far as I know, nothing caused it, gentlemen. She was alone in her bedroom at the time. I was down in my study. I'm not sure where Miss Amy was.
I was down in the kitchen.
Oh, of course.
Really, I was. Not doing anything.
All right, Amy, all right.
But I was, really.
Miss Amy, please. Anyway, I heard my aunt cry out upstairs. I rushed up and found her in a state of collapse. I phoned the hospital and did what I could for her until you arrived.
When you came up here to her room, Mr. Ward, did you happen to notice any sign of a ghost?
Oh, now wait a minute, Doctor.
I know, Mr. Ward. We're all reasonable people. But Miss Sanford said she saw a white figure come into her bedroom carrying a long knife.
I told you, Dr. Kildare.
Yes, I know, Amy, but...
I told you they'd cause trouble if they became angry.
They? Who are they?
Spirits, Dr. Gillespie.
Oh yeah.
They knew she was the one who made me stop talking to them. It was retribution. That's what it was.
Miss Amy, please. That's enough now.
Oh, you don't believe me either, Everett, but you'll find out. Oh, I've got to go tell them it wasn't my fault I stopped talking to them. They mustn't blame me for it.
I think I'd better go try to quiet her. Please excuse me.
Gentlemen, I have a rather painful question, but I do find it necessary to ask it.
Oh? What is it?
Is there any possibility that my aunt may be suffering from hallucinations? Mental instability, as you might call it.
None whatsoever, Mr. Ward. If she says she saw a ghost, then she did see a ghost.
Oh, but that's ridiculous.
Maybe. But so's the idea that Miss Sanford is not of sound and competent mind, as I believe the legal phrase reads.
I don't know what you're implying, Doctor, but what I wasn't thinking of an illegal aspect. Naturally, I'm concerned about her. She is my aunt, you know, and... Gentlemen, I think I'll bid you good night now.
Good night. You know, Doctor, I can't quite figure him out.
Jimmy, in your present condition, you're not in shape to figure anything out.
Present condition?
Yeah, ambulatory catalepsy.
Huh? Uh-oh, you mean Deborah.
I mean, if I were 30 years younger, I'd probably be the same way. Now go on downstairs and stop trying to edge toward that door gracefully.
Well, as a matter of fact, there were a couple of things that I...
Yes, of course, of course. I'll stay here a while and check Miss Sanford's pulse a time or two until we leave.
Good. And I'll, see you a little later.
All right, Jimmy. All right. Well, now, I never did get around to reading that book. Yeah, now. Shh. Huh?
They mustn't hear us.
Well, Miss Amy.
I had to see you right away.
Well, here I am. So why don't you... Say, what's that you're holding behind your back?
Oh, you mean this?
Huh? A butcher knife?
Yes, that's why I came.
Oh, why you came?
Yes, it was missing from the kitchen. I just found it, and I thought it might mean something.
You know what, Miss Amy? I think I agree with you. Come on in. Come in and shut the door.
Well, if you and Dr. Kildare are really due back at the hospital, I guess there's not much I can say except I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry too, Miss Lane. But this is something that absolutely must be taken care of. Coming, Jimmy?
Oh, yes, that important matter. What could possibly wait? I'll phone you tomorrow, Deborah.
Very well, Doctor. I'll go to the door with you.
I was wondering, Miss Lane, do you happen to know the terms of Miss Sanford's will?
Why, yes. I helped her make the final draft to go to her attorney last year.
Ah.
Except for a small bequest to me and her other employees, her estate is divided evenly between Miss Amy and Everett Ward. Oh, here we are.
You know, it's a little frightening to think of that much money in Amy's hands.
Well, it will only technically belong to her. The will appoints Mr. Ward administrator for her.
Very interesting. Well, good night, Miss Lane. I'll see you the first thing in the morning.
Good night, Dr. Gillespie. Good night, Jimmy.
Good night, Deborah.
Nice night, isn't it, Jimmy?
Yeah. Great. Suppose you tell me what this is all about.
Oh, a combination of greed, the spirit world, and a potentially perfect crime. Murder.
Murder?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, what are we leaving for?
Or not.
Huh?
There's a side entrance to the garden just ahead of us, and a stairway leading up to the terrace of Miss Sanford's sitting room. I left the terrace door unlocked.
Uh-huh.
Of course, a slight risk is involved. Criminal charge of housebreaking.
And don't forget that butcher knife. 2 hours. I'd be tired sitting this long in the dark on the sofa, let alone behind one.
Well, if we're wrong and get caught here, we may find ourselves behind something a lot worse than a sofa.
The longer we're here, the more I suspect we are wrong. Miss Amy could have misplaced that knife and...
Quiet.
Somebody in the hall outside. They're coming in.
Can you see anything?
No. Good Lord, all in white.
All right, Jimmy. Turn on the lights.
Right.
You can take off that sheet, Miss Lane.
What? Deborah!
I thought you had gone hours ago. What are you doing here?
Well, I was waiting for you. Kildare just came along for the ride.
Yeah, I guess I've had one too.
Jimmy, I was only playing a sort of joke.
Some joke.
Same kind you played earlier, Miss Lane, when you started for the drugstore and then slipped back up those terrace steps. $100,000 joke, huh?
What do you mean?
According to Miss Amy, that bequest in Miss Sanford's will isn't quite as small as you implied.
Jimmy, you don't think that
I have nothing to say.
Right. What are you going to do? Turn me in?
That's up to Mr. Ward, as soon as we wake him up and tell him about it.
Go ahead then. See how much good it does.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. I guess there's nothing much to say.
Oh, there's plenty, but, well, thanks for not saying it.
One good thing, apparently Miss Sanford hasn't waked up.
I have, though, Dr. Gillespie. How would you like to kick me?
Why? For being susceptible to the call of the wild goose? I only wish I were. Why, when I was your age, Jimmy, I was susceptible to every pretty girl who walked by.
Well, yes, but that's what worries me, Dr. Gillespie. When I'm your age, I may still be.
You have just heard the story of... Oh, I'm sorry. In just a moment, we will return to the story of Dr. Kildare.
Well, that's that, Dr. Gillespie. One more month, one more progress report.
Jimmy, it's one of the dullest duties a doctor ever had. Confound it. You gotta fight disease in the wards, and in the operating rooms, and in the laboratories. Not on a sheet of paper.
I suppose you can't run a hospital without keeping records.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's done. Oh, good morning, Parker.
Good morning, Dr. Kildare. I just picked up the new patient list from registry. This one is for you, room 417.
Room 417. What's the case, Parker?
Well, I don't really know, Dr. Kildare. It's here on the form. And here, 2 new ones for you, Dr. Gillespie.
Let's see what the gods have provided.
Oh, no. This is out.
What is it? What's the matter, Jimmy?
This new case in 417, Dr. Gillespie, you take it.
Well, why, Dr. Kildare?
Parker, you won't understand the reasoning behind this, but 417 happens to be a 22-year-old girl with a heart condition.
You have just heard the story of Dr. Kildare, originally starring Lou Ayres and Lionel Barrymore. This program was written by Les Crutchfield and directed by William P. Russo. Original music was composed and conducted by Walter Schumann. Now, for our recreated program, our stars are Jay Summerfield as Dr. Kildare, with that lovable old crotchety Andre Dixon playing Dr. Gillespie. Supporting players were that nosy, chattering Nurse Parker, Allison Byhun. As the nephew Everett Ward, we had John Byhun. And Sue Gadzinski as Deborah Lane. Who would have thought? Who would have thought she would have turned out to be the evil one? The loopy Aunt Amy was typecast, almost, by Ali Babka. And last, but certainly not least, the title role of Miss Sanford was played by Nell Brennan. Our music direction and sound effects, as always, were handled by our very own Marty McNulty. This is George Suki speaking.